Okay, I think we're going to change it up this week and do kind of a different format. And you're going to be in the spotlight. Do you know what you're talking about?
Yeah, we're going to talk about what it's like to make a family.
Oh my gosh. No, we're not. No,
Right
I just
here
thought it'd be
on
fun.
Family Friday.
I thought it'd be fun to have kind of a just generally talking about parenting and what it's like to be parents and maybe some things that we've learned along the way. So.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into it.
Before we jump into today's episode, we just wanted to share a few things with you. First, we'd like you to like this episode and then subscribe to our podcast. If you're doing that on YouTube, also hit the bell notification so that you know when we post anything new. And then share this with somebody that you feel like this would be beneficial for.
That's right. If you would like to support our show further, we would welcome that. You are welcome to do that at anchor.fm/marriagebydesign to check out your options for supporting the program financially. Otherwise, guys, the links to our social media are always in the description of every video, so feel free to check those out there. And now, let's get to the show.
Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock, and you have reached us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast. This is a show that we do where we talk about what God's design is biblically for God-honoring family and raising of our children, and practically how we can live that out in our families.
So this week, I thought it'd be fun to just kind of have a conversation about parenting and talking about the things that we've learned along the way and what impacts our parenting and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of ask Nathan some questions, and then if he wants to hear my answer, he might ask me too.
Yeah, I do want to hear your answers. So what you're saying is today we're going to get the rest of the story.
Yeah, who says that? One of your podcasts. I know.
No, it's no. It's who was it? Casey Kasem?
Is it? I don't know.
Ooh,
We're
that's
showing
horrible.
our age.
Somebody's about to blow me up in the comments.
Yikes. Okay, so Nathan, I want to know a few things, and I don't know your answers to any of these necessarily. What do you think is the best thing about parenting? Or, okay, yeah, answer that.
My favorite thing about parenting is seeing your kids grow.
My kids, but not yours.
Well, that's actually my first question to you is how many of our kids actually are mine?
Oh.
So think about that for a minute because I don't
5.
want to put you on the spot. We have 7 kids. No, but for me, my favorite thing is seeing kids grow, like seeing them learn how to take a step, right? That moment where it's like, it takes all of their willpower to get that one foot to move up 3 inches and then that other foot to move up 3 inches, or they start learning how to read, or they discover how to do algebra, or any of these things where it's like they're learning what it is like to be a human being, and you get a front row seat to that is my favorite part.
It's fascinating. It really is.
So what's yours? What's your favorite part?
That's definitely a favorite. I also really this is so self-serving maybe. I just really love that they're all about their parents when they're little. A lot of their little years. They're just so enthralled with mom and dad, and sometimes that's annoying too, but they think that that the sun rises with us and that we hang the moon,
Right. Which, I mean, that's a by design.
Right.
Because you are a picture of God to them during those early years.
Yep. So that's pretty amazing.
It's great. Yeah, it's a good call.
What did you think when you found out you were going to be dad?
For the very first time, is that what you're asking? The very first time. So probably my very first thought was, how am I going to not tell my parents this? Because they were like, if you remember, they were like on their way over to our house when you told me that, and I was going to spend like the whole day with them. I think we were going to a football game.
Right.
And you had laid out on our guest bed like a little
onesie and stuff.
Boy onesie and a little girl onesie. And I remember just being, you're kind of in shock a little bit at first when when you drop news like that on somebody. But I remember just being happy but probably my first thought was, oh man, how am I not going to be super obvious
so
to my
funny.
parents that I am
That you have
thinking of something
weird,
else.
weird going on in your head. Yep.
With our other kids, my thoughts were much more family focused than with Jackson because we were in such a bad place. And I mean, I don't even know that we knew we were in that bad of a place at the time.
No.
But with our future kids, my initial thoughts were much more, Lord, what is it about this person that you've put in Andrea's womb that you felt like you needed right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you start having these grander thoughts of, man, what do we, what are our kids going to be and how do I not screw it up for them? And so those were kind of some of my first thoughts with our, later kids. And I'll be honest, just transparently, with Easton, my first thought was, are you okay?
Me, yeah.
You, Andrea, because the transition from 3 to 4 wasn't too bad, but it was stretching you, for sure. And it felt like this was going to be a lot for you.
And it has been.
But just being transparent in case that helps anybody out there that's feeling guilty about having that thought. That was my initial thought when you told me about Easton. So that kind of runs the gamut. What were your initial thoughts?
I just think I didn't know what to think. I was
with Jackson, our oldest.
Yeah, I was surprised
because we weren't really trying.
Right. It was sort of like a little bit of an out of body experience because you're just like, man, is this happening? I guess it is. I don't really know what to think.
Right.
So, and that was at a time in my life where I had a hard time really understanding how I thought about things or how I felt about things. So it was kind of, I am sure I'm thinking back to what I thought parenting was going to be. And
how's that working out for you?
Yeah, it's not at all what I thought what I thought it was going to be. It's so much more times 1.5 billion than I thought it was going to be.
What do you mean by that? Like more
everything.
Like better, more work?
Yes.
More, all that.
Better and worse and more work and more heartache and more joy and more of myself.
Yeah.
It strips you really who you were. It strips away who you were. Not completely, but a lot of who you were. And not right away either. It's not like the moment it's not like the moment that Jackson was born. It's like, bam, I'm no longer, I'm now a mother and I'm totally, the person I was is totally gone. And now this new person has formed.
Right.
It's a process, but really I am nothing like I used to be.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of other things that we've gone through that are not parenting things, but that's part of the parenting process is that you really are refined if you allow the Lord to do that.
Yep.
You're refined and you're challenged and you're constantly giving yourself away and becoming a completely different person.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that your friends change or that you don't do anything for yourself or whatever, but you do become a very different person because your life has totally changed. And how do you not become a different person when your life has changed?
Right.
So drastically. So yeah, parenting is nothing like I thought it was going to be because you just can't have a concept of it. Just like for people who, have never lived with a significant other before they get married.
Right.
And then they get married. And a year later, you'd probably say marriage is nothing like I thought it was going to be.
Right. It's experiential. It's
right.
hard
It really is.
It's hard
you can't
to
really
know
describe
it.
Yeah. Is parenting at all like what you probably had a little bit
it's different.
Better.
Yeah.
Nathan had 4 younger siblings. So he probably had a better perspective. And I just have an older brother. He probably had a better perspective of parenting and what what little kids need and all that sort of thing.
But for exactly the reason you're saying, like I had experienced it, not being a parent. Like you don't look at siblings same way you look at a parent.
Of
But
course.
as being the oldest and 4.5 years older than my next sibling, I did the changing of diapers and a lot of babysitting and those kinds of things. So I think had an idea that was probably closer to reality of what this was going to look like than you did.
Totally.
So.
Yep. What do you think impacts you most in your parenting?
Man, that's hard. Probably. Well, I mean, I think the truthful answer is my emotions impact me in my parenting way more than I would like them to. You come into parenting and you're like, okay, I'm the parent and I'll control my emotions and I know my kids aren't going to treat me great and it'll be fine. And then you get in the heat of the parenting battle and your emotions get flared up and
it's so true.
You act out of emotion more than you should. But the other thing I would say, here's how I would answer that. I operate, or what impacts me most in my parenting, other than bad things like my emotions, is the example I saw my parents give with us when I was growing up. There are a lot of ways I look at parenting that are directly due to how I was raised. A lot of really good things, some not good things, but a lot of really good things that impact me and how I parent our kids.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, emotions can impact me a lot in my parenting. Part of just my personality is I feel guilty about everything. Every decision I make, I feel guilty about it in one way or another.
Do you feel guilty about saying that just now?
No.
Oh, okay.
So really guilt impacts my parenting a lot.
Wow.
Because I feel guilty probably hundreds of times a day about one thing, everything in one way or another. So I think guilt can impact my parenting. The guilt of, am I letting this child down, or am I enough for this child, or is this going to impact them in the future, or is this really the mom I'm supposed to be right now? And everything.
This reminds me of
it's so not like Nathan.
No, it's not. This reminds me of the scene in that documentary Harry Potter when Harry kisses Cho Chen and then Cho Chen starts crying, and later Ron and Harry and Hermione are talking about it and about why she was crying, and Ron makes the point that, well, Harry must be really bad at kissing, and Hermione goes, no, it's just that Cho was probably thinking, and then she lists off like 12 things that she was thinking, and Ron goes, not all at the same time, your head would explode. And that's totally like, listening to you describe that, I'm like, man, you're probably having all those thoughts simultaneously in a moment.
Yeah.
That's more thoughts than I have the whole day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But yeah, I know. I mean, I hear you because I see you live that out. I know the guilt is that's a cruel mistress.
It is.
It's particularly in parenting.
It is. But I think too, definitely the way I was raised impacts me. I had a great childhood.
Yeah.
And some of those things you just want to carry on into your parenting, and you're creating a child, somebody or multiple somebody's childhood. That's
right.
Huge.
Well, particularly when we know so many people that as adults they're operating out of their screwed up childhood, and like every parent's fear is that I'm just going to screw up my kids.
Right.
And we can free you from that, because the reality is
you
are going to. That's okay, because God loves your kids and he's going to fill in the gaps. But I mean, because you're a human being, you're going to do things that are going to hurt them. Yeah. And we trust God to, certainly if you realize that, apologize. But we trust God to fill in the gaps on that.
Right. What, do you have a favorite child?
No.
I know. A simple answer.
Yeah. No, I don't. My favorite's Joseph. That's why I gave him the dream coat with the Technicolors.
You're silly. We don't have a child named Joseph.
Oh.
There's no Dreamcoat.
No, I love our second daughter is probably my favorite.
We don't have a second daughter. I don't have a favorite child, but I do love them all uniquely. And I think
Yeah, that's a good way of saying that. Oh, 100%. For sure.
Yeah, I love them all uniquely. You know, if you're a parent of more than one, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. Like, I love Jackson for different reasons than I love Ryan. And
right, you mean the thing
reasons.
you love most about him
right.
is different than the thing
right.
you love most about Ryan.
Right, like they're all our kids are different people, and I love them all in different, you know.
Right.
In different, I can show love to them differently, and
right.
the things that I love about them, some of those things are very different from the others. So.
Yeah, I've shared this on our podcast before, but my favorite child is whichever one's being obedient at any given moment. And I will tell our children that.
Yeah.
And that really only impacts one who cares about things like that. And she's usually the one that's obeying in the first place anyway.
Yeah. What would you say annoys you most about my parenting?
Annoys me most about your parenting? I probably...
I think I can guess what it would be.
Oh, well, guess. This will be interesting.
That I can... I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I can sometimes be swayed by, you know, like I'll make a decision. No, you can't have that. And then I'll decide, I shouldn't have said no. And I'll be like, okay, you can, you know, whatever. And it seems like I'm just being swayed by their emotion or their rebuttal or whatever. But in reality, it's just that I realized I shouldn't have said no to that.
Right. This goes back to a principle. That doesn't annoy me.
Oh.
This goes back to a principle we actually did a Family Friday about, which was saying yes or no to our yes versus no to our kids. And I think we both said as parents, we can tend to just say no and then think about the question and go, well, there isn't really any reason that I should have said no.
Yeah.
I think part of it is just if your kids are like ours, you just get tired of them asking for things nonstop.
It is nonstop
all day. And it just comes.
It's like a mental overload sometimes.
Right. You know, it's
and
like.
you're not even really thinking about the question that they're asking.
Right. Can I throw this baseball through the window? No. Can I jump off the roof? No. Can I have a piece of gum? No. Well, I don't actually care if you have a piece of gum. I just feel like saying no all the time.
But in the time that you're thinking about, I shouldn't have said no, they're complaining to you about, why can I have this piece of gum? Blah, blah, blah. And so it seems like you're giving in to their whining or whatever it is, you know?
Right.
And it's not. It's like, I've rethought that.
No, that's real. I mean, that's for sure real. Excuse me. I think probably the annoying thing is you can probably you tend much more towards the child-centric home than I do.
Mm-hmm,
like
I do.
Making your kids let's make sure they're getting entertained. Let's make sure they're having fun. Let's make sure
the most annoying of that is I do not like to let my babies, like the youngest, cry.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so like Easton's the baby. He's 1. And it never fails. Every time I'm trying to cook, he wants me to hold him, which is sometimes impossible while you're cooking. Or he's at my feet crying or whatever, and it just drives me batty. But I also have a really hard time just setting him on the other side of the gate and being like, go play, buddy. Right. You gotta, you know.
Which, of course, is the reason we bought the gate.
I know.
So, yeah, it's funny. And where this plays out, and it's usually not combative, but Andrea will be like, can you please just pick him up? And then I'll just pick him up and put him on the other side of the gate. And then she's, frustrated because what she meant was, will you make him stop crying? Like, hold him and don't let him cry. And, homie, don't play that.
Yeah. Yes, so, I do tend towards a more child-centric home. That's probably what I was just going to say. Is that what annoys you?
That's what I figured it probably would be.
And it's not like we neglect our relationship for our children, but yes, we're just a little bit different in that.
One way this kind of plays out in our family is at bedtime too. Like I am militant Like at 7:45, we're getting ready for bed so that people are in bed at 8:00. Because at 8:01, that's my time to hang out with you or do our own thing or whatever we're doing that night.
Insert all the guilty thoughts into Andrew's head about but I should read more books to them, or I should snuggle with them more, or whatever.
No.
So he's like, let's get their teeth brushed, get them in bed, pray,
goodbye, don't
good night,
right,
shut the door.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm just going to read a book to them. And then I'm going to snuggle each one of them for 20,000 minutes. The guilt inside of me. And they're all like, oh, Mom.
Yeah, they all know, too. That's the aggravating part. Is it's like, babe, they don't actually love you right now. They're just manipulating you.
Yes, that's probably true. What do you... feel like brings you the most joy? I know I said like, what do you enjoy the most? But is there something about parenting that you feel like brings you the most joy?
Definitely when my kids show physical affection to me. That's of their own accord.
Yes.
And they probably know this because I'm big on like, hey, come over here and give me a kiss. And so the net result of that with all of our kids is, I'll say like, hey, Ryan, come give me a kiss on the cheek. No. Come on, come give me a kiss. No. Gotta chase me. And, it's become a game, and it's fine. I mean, it's fun, and we laugh and giggle, and that's all great. But, like, when I come home from work and everyone runs over to give me a hug, that's the greatest. And Easton is the only baby we've had that's, like, pretty cool with Dad. The rest of them were like...
No thanks.
No, Mom, and that's it. Lincoln's still that way, and he's 3. But
he's coming around a little bit. He did actually choose to snuggle you for a little while the other day.
And tonight, while we were watching a movie.
That's amazing.
But of course, you weren't in the room, so got to take second best. Yeah, so I love that. That brings me joy. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely love when they want to love on me of their own accord, which becomes more meaningful with like Jackson, who's nearly 13. So I do love that. Yep. I also love when I feel like it brings me so much joy when they're obedient quickly the first time I ask and with a good attitude. Because with one of my children, I feel like that happens more frequently than the other ones, and I'm so grateful for that. But as a parent, you get a lot of complaints for the things that you ask your kids, but the times where, man, they just do what you ask them to do right away without a complaint, with a happy attitude, it's like that brings me so much joy, because I feel like, I mean, that makes my job easier, of course, but I feel like maybe they're getting it.
Right.
And the maybe less than 5 times where I feel like somebody was just obedient, not less than 5 times, that's not true, but obedient out of love is like, it has to be what God feels.
Yeah, I think that's
You're not
right.
obedient because you're scared of a punishment. You're obedient because you trust that I want the best for you, and that I love you and you love me, and so you're just going to do what I ask you to do. It's amazing. I think that brings me the most joy. When they kind of like get it. They start to get some of these big concepts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
What gives you the most heartache in parenting?
Well, I mean, it's got to be, hey, this thing I just said, or this situation that just went down, is this going to like come up again and again and again for them and like the rest of their lives?
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, hurt and those things, that's just real. So it's not that I'm trying to avoid that. It's that, man, you want those things to come about in your kids' lives because like the jerk kid at school was mean to them, not because my dad said this mean thing to me that was really hurtful.
Right.
So, and again, when my emotions get the better of me, I think that's when I get that heartache where I'm like, man, is this, what do my kids think of me?
Yeah.
Based on how I've been treating them or whatever. So that probably gives me the most heartache.
I think, I would agree with that. I think something that gives me heartache, except that, is Yeah, it's in that vein. When they've been hurt, either by me or by somebody else.
Sure.
Man, that's so tough when your kids are hurt by somebody and seemingly on purpose.
Right.
And you just want to take that away from them, and
Right.
you know, you wish that they could have a clearer understanding of how little that really means in the scope of life, and all of that, and that's really hard, and you can't effectively teach some of these lessons to kids. You know, once you get to be an adult, you have such a clearer understanding of what it's like to be a 12-year-old or the impact of things that happened when you were that age and how you could, you know, but when you're 12, you're 12. You're not
right.
38. So yeah, that's a hard part of parenting, is like seeing your kids hurt and not being able to do anything about that. And sometimes that hurt comes from me or comes from somebody else or because of a decision that they made, and now they have to pay the consequences for that. It's just hard to see your kids hurt.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's a heartache of parenting. What would you say is your least favorite thing about the day-to-day parenting job?
Discipline. Easily.
Yeah.
It's like the most important part, and the consistency in that is critical.
So important.
But that's what makes it such a drag. Is you just I mean, with 5 kids, it just feels like, and it's not necessarily all 5 at once, but it just feels like it's just constant discipline.
Right.
And being consistent in it, having discipline that makes sense instead of just reacting out of anger, can be difficult. Trying to figure out, like, okay, this most latest offense, what level does that rise to on the discipline, plane? Yeah, it's just all that is definitely.
I totally agree with that. 100%. It is. It's grinding.
Yeah.
And gets so annoying.
And you can understand why so many parents just stop disciplining. That'd be way easier. I mean, if I didn't care about the consequences of that, man, I'd stop disciplining tomorrow. I mean, other than that we're directed to do it.
Of course.
In my flesh, I don't want to do that.
I know. Yeah, and it's hard to explain that to your kids. We do, but, they don't really understand. I discipline you because I love you and I want better for you than to be undisciplined. But, yeah, it would be really easy for me to just turn a blind eye to this or to just let you continue in this stupidity.
Right.
Or this, it would be easier for me to let you continue in that, and you can get the natural consequences at some point down the road.
Right.
To this, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the discipline, you're right. Of course, the more kids you have, the more discipline you're going to have, and it does get to be
a lot.
A lot.
Yes, it does.
I dislike also the constant breaking of things. Our kids aren't like running amok, so they're not just having craziness and breaking everything they find in their path.
Yeah, some days.
But our house
gets well used.
It gets beat on, and the things that we have get well used, and I do not like that part.
And it's hard to even be that motivated to like paint the wall chips or whatever, because it's like
I'm not motivated to do that. They're just gonna get chipped again. Right. Yeah, that's a hard thing.
Yeah, that's tricky.
It is.
No doubt.
What are you looking forward to most about parenting in the future?
I mean, for me, the older the kids get, the more that's sort of my bailiwick.
Nathan's really
I'm good with like the junior high, high school, college, young adult phase. So really,
he's really good with all the phases, but his sweet spot is more those ages. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of the deep thinking, becoming an adult, all that is what I love. I mean, it's what I love to do. I mean, we're doing it right now. Like that's what I love to do. I love to teach, those who are interested in learning and in becoming, what God wants them to be. So that's probably what I look forward to the most.
Right.
The kind of young adult and adult phases of parenting.
That's great. I wouldn't say I look forward to that. I try to really relish the stages that we're in.
Yeah, that's good.
And I don't think
right.
that you wish away the stages that we're in either.
No, of
but
course not.
It's a little bit hard to accept, for me, to accept, like, moving on in parenting, that they're not going to be in our house forever, and that these relationships between them aren't going to be forced. I mean, they love their siblings, but eventually they'll have to decide to have relationship with their siblings.
Right. It's a good call.
And all those things that happen as our kids get older and then eventually move out. It's hard to kind of accept
when
that
they're 16.
Oh my gosh. Not when they're 16. It is hard to accept that life changes and the dynamics are going to change, and
Yep.
my kids aren't always going to live here, obviously. And, so
Amen.
I think for me, that's really difficult, but I love the baby stages, the baby toddler stages for certain reasons, but they're hard stages. So I am looking forward to eventually getting out of those stages and having more of a depth of relationship with.
Yeah, it's good.
With my young kids. And I've heard from a lot of people that as long as your kids don't fall off the reservation, having adult relationships with your kids is
really
pretty
cool.
sweet.
Yeah. I agree.
So in fact, one of our mentors have 2 kids, and I remember when we were pregnant with Riker, who's our third, I was kind of nervous about that, and just nervous about having 3, and one of our mentors said, we love the adult relationships, the relationships we have with our children as adults, and I wish we had more so we could have more of that. And that really impacted me when she said that. And so
I can tell you had 3 more.
Yeah.
2 more after the third.
Yeah. Yeah. So I look forward to that too. And having those, Lord willing, those great relationships with our kids as adults, and seeing what they turn into and what they choose for their life and their path. So I think that's an exciting thing, although kind of terrifying too.
True.
Because then they, as they get older, they get to make these decisions on their own. And when they're young, you have so much control, and you just don't when they're older, and you shouldn't.
Right.
But that's kind of scary. That's right, though.
Babe, I'll be there with you when
I know.
it happens. That'll be great.
That's good. Well, thanks. I think that was fun.
You bet. That was fun.
Just kind of talk about some random parenting thoughts and kind of a little bit of who we are as parents.
It's great.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. Love to get your feedback on what are your go-tos? What do you look forward to the most? What's been the scariest for you with regards to your parenting?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. And remember, God is for your family.